Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for doing this.
Of
Good to
course.
see
I
you.
like your hair. What's going on there? It looks amazing.
Yeah, this was a mistake. So I went in with a different picture, and the woman who was a sub, it was my fault. I messed up my time because everything at the beginning of the school year is so hard for me, like the too many new routines. And the lady just like, I wanted it here, and she went to there.
Oh
So I
my
did.
gosh.
It was the first time I've cried about my hair since I was like 20, but I did cry. And now I'm just like, well, it's what's happening.
I love it.
Do you love it? My son, at first, everyone laughed. Like I came home and the teenagers are teenagers and they laughed. And then my youngest guy was like, I actually kind of love it. And I was
Yeah.
like, all right, well, it's here. Like I have the big girl pants. I cried. And now I'm like, this is the hair. So
I really like it. I think it's
thank
cool.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I
I'm
like it.
adjusting. I'm
Yeah.
adjusting. Yeah.
Um, okay, well, let's just jump right in. I'll say welcome. We'll talk about your new book and get started.
Awesome.
I'm gonna need this.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
inscribing it to me. Thank you for the
Uh,
acknowledgement. It was so nice. Oh my
well, I mean,
gosh.
it's really real. I'll talk about it on here too, but that's
Okay.
really real. And I was with Deborah Goodrich and Catherine Newman last night at Ocean House.
Oh.
Almost didn't come home. I was like, I'm going to live in this giant yellow building and never leave.
There's something so special about the ocean house. Oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
gosh.
Yeah, it was amazing. Okay, go ahead. I just wanted to say that. Oh,
Okay.
you just glitched. Okay, you just glitched. I hope it wasn't my email. I mean, my inner. Let's hope it's
Oh,
going to
okay. Am I okay? You want to leave and come back?
fine now. It says I have signal, so I think we do. Let's
Okay.
go.
Okay. Welcome, Megan. Thank you for coming back on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Can Anyone Tell Me Essential Questions About Grief and Loss. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I can't believe I was ever in conversation with you once, never mind twice. This is just crazy. It's such an honor.
Oh my gosh. Well, so for anyone listening, Megan and I originally were in the same in book club. I started Zibby's book club in the pandemic, and Megan was one of the first people to join. And out of that came her memoir, End of the Hour, which we ended up publishing. And now she has this other book, which we did not publish because we don't do this kind of book, but is also like amazing and so helpful in the way that Megan has been helpful to me and people in my life and so many others during such a time of grief and everything. So thank you. Amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean, yeah, one of the things that I don't even know if I have said this to you before. I mean, one of the phrases I use often is like, you're kind of stitched into the hem of my life. Like, there are so
Aw.
many things where, there's a conversation or a connection or something that you have started or helped me with or been a part of. And this book, honestly, I started thinking about this book. I was writing End of the Hour and I was thinking about my job as a clinician and how we a little bit lie to grievers. We sort of put it on them, right? We're sort of like, well, this will help you, when we know it doesn't really help. We just don't have a lot else to offer them, so we like a little bit lie. We also act as though it's like a personal experience that they are going through, that they need to like go and do on their own, instead of this developmental process that's part of life that we all need to be educated in, to the way we are about teenagers, right? Like everybody knows that teenagers have these raging hormones and we support them in that. And there's so much biological information and neurological information that we have about the grief process that we just kind of like keep to ourselves for no reason. So you sent me an email after your mother-in-law died and said, I cannot keep my thoughts straight. I have like brain fog and my memory is just not intact. Is that normal? And I was like, yeah, that's hella normal. But I had this thing that I often have, which is like, I wanted to apologize to you from the field because everybody should just know that. Everybody should just know that brain fog, it isn't a given, but it's a standard grief response. So I read 188 books about grief and loss. Some of them were memoirs, some of them were novels, a lot of them were clinical books. And really, what I was doing was trying to find the book that had all the answers to the things that I think we need to be telling the truth about. And of course, I couldn't find it because that's how everybody ends up writing a book, is they're like, oh, I wrote the book that I wanted. And I worked with Jessica Dulong, who we both know and I've known since childhood, and and it's how I got my agent. And we were like, let's go. So each chapter in this book is a genuine experience that I've had with a client, another person, or myself, where it's like, I just fundamentally believe it would be helpful to grievers and the people who are supporting them if we said it more plainly with more truth and then offered some actual support. That wasn't like, go see your therapist, because grief is not a mental health problem. It impacts your mental health, but it's just a normal developmental experience that we all have.
Wow. Well, I think the way that you organized the book and gave everyone all of the information, and obviously you have so much information in that brain of yours, which comes seeping out anytime you open your mouth, which is amazing. But now everybody who doesn't necessarily know you personally can benefit because you organize it in such a great way. And it has your sense of humor too. Like, why are my friends annoying me all of a sudden? And like chapters like that people wouldn't necessarily seek out help for or realize that they are related to grief or whatever, but they're in here. And then the exercises too that you give for every chapter. And I love how you say, here's something you can try. Because you're
Yeah.
not like, this is gonna fix it. You're just like, try this breathing exercise, try this writing exercise, like give it a shot. Why not?
Yeah, because I think what we're really needing to do is give grievers some hope that the moment that they're in right now, that early loss, which feels confounding, this, I just really felt like I was not at all myself after my mother died, and I didn't know how to find myself again. And the question I was asking was like, what am I going to do? What should I do? And that is not the same as saying, how do I get over this grief, or how do I cure myself of the grief? Because that doesn't happen. You just learn to sort of become a griever. But you can't act as though the 24 hours of the day for somebody that just lost their husband or their brother or their dog or their marriage is just going to have like one or two moments where they're going to have a hard time, or an hour's worth in a therapy office. They need to be given things that feel like, okay, I'm creating a grief practice. This is what I'm going to do every day. And that's going to help me learn to carry this loss in a way that like I don't have the emotional muscles for right now. And I've actually created this whole curriculum off of Can Anyone Tell Me? So Can Anyone Tell Me ends up sort of being like the precursor book that you read, the pre-required reading. And the course is called the Grief Mentor Method, and it has these 6 core components around that are imperative to grief and loss. And really what they are, I have this big, wipe off board in my office. And anytime anybody told me that anything helped them in grief and loss, I wrote it on the board. So if you tell me going to a trampoline park helped you, which a client did tell me, and then I was able to be like, ooh, I think I can probably tell you the neuroscience behind why that helped. If you tell me knitting helped, if you tell me that random sex with someone in a bar helped, these are all real things. I put them on the board because my experience with grievers are they have no idea how to do this moment or even imagine doing a moment ahead of time. So rather than saying, right, I'm a person where if you said, what do you want to eat? That is a really hard question for me to answer. But if you said, do you want Chinese or do you want Italian? That's easier for me. So the book really sort of sets us up for like, what do you think is possible that you could do? What feels possible? Some people jump right into, they're going to start a foundation. And there is kind of this element of like, if you do not build something that is significant and gives back to the world, then you really haven't found meaning in your grief. That's not what it takes. You don't need to do all that. But you do need to do something because you can't go backwards. You will never be who you were before this loss. It doesn't mean it has to, mean that you're not going to travel down the same path, but you might take a couple of left turns. And you probably have to add some things that weren't there before. So the grief mentor method really is like, it's almost like a bookshelf full of ideas which are organized in these components. So one of the components is around mindfulness. You do really have to kind of connect into your body to feel your feelings in order to grieve. So we teach people a million ways. And when I say a million ways, I mean like coloring, doing puzzles, certain apps, mindfulness. And then we ask people what's their energy look like. Are they, really anxious, or are they really kind of feeling depressed? Because you don't attend to both of those things the same. And then we talk about nourishment, which I also talk about in the book, which is like, look, your serotonin's in your gut. So I mean, after my dad died, I basically only ate like rolled up pieces of ham and Swiss cheese. That was kind of like all I could do. And then I was like, oh, I need to drink a green smoothie because I need the macronutrients of kale in order to create serotonin. So we talk a little bit about that. And we talk about the translation, which, that was the process I was in with you, which was like, what is the story I tell myself about what happened? Because it really matters how you talk to yourself about what you've gone through. Are you positioning yourself as a victim? Are you positioning yourself as a heroine? Like, are either of those totally true? And then how well are you able to communicate to others? Some people's grief story, they're like, no one will talk to me. And what they're not aware of is the way in which they are presenting their story is so off-putting. It's not inviting engagement in the way that they want it to. And then the concept of going outside, literally physically getting outside. Maybe also there's a chapter in Can Anyone Tell Me, which almost was the title of the book, which is Why Do I Think That Butterfly Is My Mom? A
Mhm.
lot of people really are presented with this concept of like, what do I believe happens after death? And they're brought into the spiritual conversation that maybe they weren't looking for. So we talk about that in the outside, but also you're going to have to go outside of your networks. This is that part where like, why do I kind of hate everyone who is in my life right now? And how do I find people that I feel like I can just innately connect with? It's kind of nobody's fault, but it happens a lot. And then the R in mentor is ritual and rest. So it's the idea that we always want to have that thing where we can say, this is what I do to honor my dad. But you can't invent it in your head. You have to like, oh, actually, this is random. I didn't do this on purpose, but this is what I do to honor my dad. This is his 1986 Ralph Lauren cologne that he used to wear when he was like in his mid 40s, going out to cocktail parties, the way I think of him as healthiest. So on his birthday and on Father's Day, and when I miss him, I just wear his cologne.
Aw.
It's the best. It's the best. I love it. But also rest. Grief is such a learning process. I always think about how when I sent my kids to kindergarten, which was 3 hours, it was 3 hour kindergarten. That was what they were starting, or preschool. They came home, like ate an entire box of goldfish crackers, drank two squeezy boxes of apple juice, and then like conked out like they had been minors. They were so tired. And the reason they were tired is everything they did that day was new. Everything. Like sitting in a circle, putting the trucks away, lining up for recess. They'd never done any of that before. And their little minds were like, oh my God, so many new things. Grief is like that. It's like, oh my God, so many new things. Like now that I'm thinking about Thanksgiving, I have to think about Thanksgiving differently. Now that I'm trying to pick up the phone, they're not there on the other end of the phone. So really encouraging people to rest is part of it. And what I tried to do with Can Anyone Tell Me, in really bite-sized pieces with normal language anywhere I could use it, explain to people why all that stuff is so important, and sort of why we have been really we should have given this information to people a long time ago. It's our miss, I think, from the field of trauma to not have offered concrete suggestions with real, understandable explanations as to what is going on. We grieve with our bodies. We can talk about bodies. We can talk about bodies across cultures and genders and all the things. But we instead sort of say like, well, feel your feelings. There's a guy that when I'm on my podcast with grief experts, somebody always says like, feel your feelings or honor your emotions, and then he'll immediately send me an email that says, no one knows what that means, Megan. No one. And I appreciate his candor about it because, we've added a lot of like therapy language or soft when really it's more like, I don't know, being in boot camp or something. It's like full contact. It's so hard. And we need to be able to give people more. so that they can say, I have 24 hours. This is what I'm going to do to get me through those 24 hours. I'm going to focus on this.
So this program that you're referring to,
Yeah.
where is it? Like who is it for? How do you take it? Like what is it?
We are, well, so the best, if someone is like, oh my God, I need to know more about that, come to my website and just send me a DM. But it's literally rolling out with the publication of this book on October 29th. So they're happening in pairs. And we have a couple of things going on. One is we're training clinicians so that they can know all the exercises and be able to sort of be in it. What's exciting about it for clinicians is we think about the concept of the curriculum as kind of like playing Trivial Pursuit. We've made it's a rainbow of colors each, and you want to have you want to have answered a question in each one of the colors. So, just like I always go for arts and entertainment and avoid science, you're probably going to do the same in the grief mentor method. Like if you're not an outdoorsy person, that's probably not what you're going to do, but we're going to ask you to try some things anyway. So right now you can learn more about it on the website, but if people follow me on Instagram, it's going to be in a lot of places soon. We're taking it to Crepallo in January. I have a bunch of colleagues, Barry Liner Grant's coming and Allison Gilbert, and we're going to be using it as a way to create a grief camp at Crepallo in January. It's going to be up at Omega in May. And then my team is offering it in various ways, one of which is going to be a really accessible, inexpensive platform that you can just get prompts. Every day from the New York Times, I get a like, just for you, Meghan. And it has like the articles that it thinks that I would like, I've selected. And that's what we're hoping for the Grief Mentor method is that we'll be able to put it in a prompt so that once people go through the process every day, they'll just get some suggestions of how they might attend to their grief that day with exercises.
You might want to do something, not, I mean, not that you're asking, but I
I will,
could
I'll,
resist.
please,
Yeah.
I'll take all the advice.
Yeah. Um, so you know how in baby center they had like when your
Yes.
baby's 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old, or like it's the size of this, or now your baby's four or whatever. Um, I don't know of a grief site that does that. Like your grief is, it's your 2 month
Distinguish.
anniversary, it's your year anniversary. Here's what you should look out for. This is probably coming. I don't know, maybe there is, but that would be useful.
I don't think, I mean, I don't think there is. And even if there was, there's not enough grief resources anyway. So even if we were duplicating somebody else's efforts, but I love what you're onto, which is the idea that, everybody knows it's harder. It's more physical in the earlier days of grief, like the sleeping and the eating and the, catastrophizing in your brain and the brain fog. But I love the idea of sort of helping people through their timeline because, one of the things that we sort of get wrong with grief is we act as though the problem is the person who died or the thing that we lost. And that's only part of it. Part of it is who I am in my life right now. Right. So if I'm, as I am, a mom in her 50s of three teenagers and I lose my mother, that's a different experience than a mom who just gave birth to a baby who loses her mom.
Hmm.
So part of what we're trying to do is help people really personalize it for themselves
Yep.
and how, what are their needs and how to, so what we focus on are those symptoms. So rather than the timeline, kind of more what we say is like, how much sleep are you getting?
Hmm.
And part of what I'm most excited about, and this book, the last several chapters are maybe the most important to me, um, is that we work really hard to say, okay, if none of the advice and the support and the exercises are working for you, now it's time to go see a trauma-informed therapist who specializes in grief and loss, who can give you not support, but treatment, who can
Hmm.
help treat the fact that you haven't slept in a year. That's really important to me because I think even in the field of grief and loss, we do not do a great job of helping people feel empowered to know the difference, right? Like if you played tennis and your elbow twitched, you yourself would be like, I should probably go see a doctor about that. But there is this very, like, because we have made grief kind of seem like a personal failure of some kind, like, oh, you are being impacted by this rather than this is the thing that happened to you. People are really hesitant to say, oh, I need more support and I need more help and I need all across their lives at work and in their religious communities. And so what we really want to be able to do is say like, okay, but here's the red line. Here's when here's how you can distinguish. And one of those things is if everything that we've suggested didn't help you, if you've
Hmm.
been doing this for 3 months and you are no better, don't wait longer than 3 months. Because a lot of the other thresholds are like, well, if you're still yearning for a year or you still have profound sadness after 18 months, like that's a really long time to not have core support around grief and loss. So we're hoping, I mean, I'm hoping because what we've had before is like the stages of grief, which really don't offer much. They just sort of tell you you're on exit 4 on the highway. They don't really say like what you should do there. And they're not really intended for grievers. So they have a lot of limitations. What we're hoping with Can Anyone Tell Me is that the grief mentor method that comes out of it is going to make people feel like there's a million possibilities that they wake up every day. And if they take a walk with a friend, guess what? That's one of the things that we say people have reported help them with grief and loss. So look at you grieving. It's
Hmm.
something you have no idea how to do, but you're already doing it because the hope that you are going to one day not only grieve and maybe be able to have a semblance of something that doesn't feel so intense is really it's really important for grievers to feel like they have that. And it's hard to imagine when your brain is kind of in this really stunned, like hit by a frying pan place that the many of us find ourselves in.
Maybe there should be like a hat or a t-shirt that says, "Look at me grieving."
Look at me grieving, right?
Right?
So we have a book festival coming up.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so we haven't we haven't, it comes out on Friday. People are going to know, but it's called the Grieftastic Book Festival and Brunch, and there's 35 authors coming, and we have all the swag, like bracelets that say, excuse me while I grieve, and griefy, and I'm sad. And, they're more tongue in cheek than serious, but they are really designed to sort of like, help people feel more okay about this thing that's happening to them that, for the most part, nobody did anything to deserve it. It's just what's happening. And I want to say one other thing about the book. So I am doing a whole bunch of like bookstore and JCC and events with the book, and we haven't put them up yet because they're still getting established. But my delightful team came up with we're having an insight tour, which basically means we send you an early version of the book. So you get the PDF of the book, you get to read it, and then I come to your group, your organization, and talk about two of the chapters that you think is most relevant to your group. So we just opened this up to sort of friends and family. And I'll tell you, the thing that is the coolest about it is people are like, okay, so most of my friends are going through menopause. Can you come and talk about like loss related to that? And yes, of course. I have a group of women who, all of them are empty nesters this year. And
Mm,
I want to talk about what does that mean to be an empty nester. There's a group, it's men and women who are all recently divorced or uncoupled in some way, and they want to talk about that. And so even though when they were putting this sort of speaking tour, the lecture tour together, I was like, I don't know who's going to want to talk about this. It's ending up, I'm really excited about it because it's like, oh, I'm going to have one kind of conversation and another kind of conversation and another. So I just want to offer that to folks that if that's encouraging and exciting to you, also get in touch with us because we're putting that together kind of up and down the East Coast and the West Coast right now. And I do think the book will lend itself. We just got a church group was like, hey, come and talk to us about the spirituality chapter. And it's just so fun for me because it's a lot to cover. It's a lot to talk about. And I just think what better than having like a little discussion group with people who are going through it, and that's how the book is designed, is just to sort of pick it up and be like, oh, the name of that chapter, why is my brain broken? Like that is for me. Or, the chapter that says like, why do I suddenly hate all my friends and family? Like that is for me. And if that's what you're going through, you maybe are not going to go and look at the chapters about why you're not eating and sleeping because that's not what you're thinking about. And it's really designed for grievers in that way, but also people who are supporting grievers, to be able to look it up and be like, wow, she's really doing chaotic things right now. Like, how do I support her? And then hopefully out of these 35 chapters, there'll be something that resonates and offers something core that's helpful.
I'm gonna throw out one more idea. Not that
I love this.
I don't even know why I'm doing this, but
Oh my God, I
like,
love it.
but there are people all over the country who are going through these types of things and who aren't on the coasts or, don't have the time or whatever. But it would be great if you did, not that you have time for this either, but one Zoom for each chapter and the people who, need it or can come in and just like pop into your group.
God, that's such a good idea.
You could
Why
do
should I be
No,
surprised?
you could do like one a
That is
week. You could do one a
such a
week
good
and
idea.
then you could market to all different groups. So the empty nesters would know to come on XYZ day and then you could market to people who, maybe prolonged, I don't know, whatever. So, but I think
That's
that would be more useful almost than you going to a 10-person group in California or something, which is wonderful. But like
yeah.
to scale it and have it be a free resource or paid or whatever for people who,
Well, all of
well,
it is sort of free because I'm putting it together with work I'm doing across the country. So, it really is just the cost of the book. Like it won't make a lot of sense if you have, well, I mean, it would still, but buy the book. Um, yeah, but that's really, I love the idea. We do have some courses that we're going to be offering for free, but I actually love this idea of like the class might just be a discussion about the chapter of the book.
Mhm.
A really, and also I would love those conversations. I would love those lectures. We do a lot of 1 hour lectures, particularly for companies right now that are sort of based on one of the chapters.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's all the different people now, they go to like all different places to get this stuff. Like I just had someone
right.
reach out to me today about like divorce, the child loss you feel during divorce on a non-custody day. Like there is no group for that.
That's right.
So if you
That's
centralize like all the ways, then it's far more than death.
Well,
Anyway.
it is. I mean, and that's what the book, although I think if you read the book, you'll feel that it a little bit skews towards the loss of someone that you loved, but it really is intended to be around any kind of loss.
Yeah.
And, I'm in my 50s, and that for women around me is, you know, some of it is loss of dreams. They're not going to become
Yeah.
an Olympic athlete, and
Hmm.
they didn't realize that until just now. But what you just described, which is there are all these little niches that are
Hmm.
very specific to, single moms who their kid does something amazing and they don't have a partner to
Hmm.
turn to and say like, oh my God, look at the amazing thing. That's a kind of grief.
Hmm.
So yeah, there to have topical classes that are maybe anchored in the chapters is a
Hmm.
perfect idea. So look for that.
Okay.
Scratching,
Well, you're doing
scratching
so much already,
concept,
so.
Brad. We are doing so much, but anywhere there's a need, we're doing a lot of sort of like testing it, right? Like, do people want this or do they want this? And some of the things that I'm like, this is the best idea we ever had. People are going to love this. Falls totally flat. And I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, well, learned.
Yeah.
And then little things like I do a talk about neurodivergence in
Hmm.
grief.
Yep.
And
That's
I'm like,
interesting.
oh, this is sort of interesting. That is always when I teach that class, people are so interested, not just for themselves, but also for other people
Yeah.
about how grief might be different. So,
Because no one's talking about that. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And you need to talk about it because it actually does really matter. Everyone thinks that the idea of having a ritual like a funeral helps all people, but it doesn't. It totally excludes some people who would not normally go to a place where there was loud music or 350 people.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Megan, you're just getting started. This is so exciting. I can just hear the, excitement and all the facets of this movement that you're spearhead. So the book, again, just a jumping off point, but can anyone tell me is like such a great user-friendly manual, if you will, of with so many things that address so many of the common concerns that aren't really organized or talked about in this way. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being just a core supporter. I think of all of this work that I do that's outside of the office as being the growth that happened to me through my own grief and loss. And I mean, you were there and being like, of course, you should do this. Let's do
Oh,
it. Come on. From the very early days. So I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful for all your support and enthusiasm.
thank you. All right. Well, I'll see you with the grief-tastic or whatever,
Yes, you
if I
will.
can. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Thanks,
Okay. All
Zibby.
right.
Take care.
Bye,
Bye.
Megan. Bye.